Nyla Benton sat at her desk near the 14th floor window of Kessler Innovations, tapping nervously on her keyboard. Her screen showed a half-written email to HR, one she hadn't planned to write until today forced her hand. Her palms were damp, and her heart wouldn't slow down. Everyone around her moved like nothing was wrong, tapping keyboards, pouring coffee, gossiping near the copier. But to her, the walls were closing in. It wasn't supposed to happen this way. A year ago, this job was her big break. She had worked retail, done freelance copy gigs, even managed a social media page for a dry cleaner, all while getting her marketing certificate from a community college. So when she got the call from Kessler Innovations, she'd cried. Actual tears, not like the ones threatening to fall now. These were different. These weren't grateful. They were gutting. Nyla glanced up. Her reflection in the window looked composed. Long box braids neatly pinned, maroon lipstick untouched, blouse tucked. She looked like she had it all under control. But her stomach told a different story. Her body knew the truth before her brain could accept it. Her laptop dinged. Subject, meeting request. Damon Kessler, or 10 a.m. or office 1401. Her breath hitched. The CEO never emailed directly. Not unless something was serious. She knew what this was about. The file. That stupid, cursed file. She had stayed up all night at the hospital with her mother, who had suffered a sudden stroke. Nyla had tried uploading the investor pitch deck from the waiting room, but her hotspot failed twice. She thought she'd submitted it in time. She even emailed IT for confirmation, but it never went through. By the time the investors arrived the next morning, the main folder was blank. A junior analyst caught the error. Nyla took the fall. She clicked accept on the invite, then stood. Every step toward his office felt heavier than the last. As she passed the glass walls, a few co-workers glanced up and then looked away quickly. That kind of avoidance was louder than whispers. Her heels clicked across the marble hallway until she stopped at the massive frosted door that read, Damon Kessler, Chief Executive Officer. She knocked once. Come in. His voice was smooth but emotionless. She opened the door. The room was ice. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the LA skyline. A minimalist desk, a single plant, a framed patent, and behind it all, Damon Kessler, in a charcoal suit, no tie, sleeves slightly rolled. He didn't ask her to sit. Miss Benton, he said, his eyes scanning his tablet. Do you know why you're here? Yes. Good. Saves time. He looked up. His eyes were sharp, calculating. Not angry, just done. We lost a $4.7 million contract because of your error. Her throat tightened. It wasn't intentional. I didn't say it was. He set the tablet down and stood. But intention doesn't reverse damage. She stepped forward. Mr. Kessler, my mom had a stroke that night. I was at the hospital. I tried to upload the file remotely, but the system failed. I contacted... He held up a hand. This isn't a negotiation. Her words caught in her throat. I reviewed your record, he added, tone clipped. You've been consistent, hard-working. But this was sloppy. And at this level, sloppy is a liability. I've given everything to this job, she whispered. One mistake was one too many. The silence between them thickened. I'll have HR process your exit, he said, turning back to his screen. You may clear your desk before noon. It wasn't rage that hit her. It was disbelief, the kind that made her blink twice, hoping she'd misheard. Mr. Kessler. He didn't look up. So she turned, slowly, and left. Her heels echoed like thunder. By 11:15 a.m., her box was full. The break-room coffee mug Damon had once handed her after a late-night deadline. Her best team player desk plaque. The USB drive she carried everywhere. Everything that had felt permanent was now disposable. Nyla rode the elevator down in silence, her chest so tight it hurt to breathe. The moment the doors opened, she walked straight to the parking garage. Only when she reached her car, an old silver Camry with a busted passenger door, did the tears fall. And they fell fast. She wasn't someone who cried at work or in public, but today she let it go. Not because she was weak, but because everything she had built, everything she had tried to control, shattered in a single meeting. By 3 p.m. she was in her apartment, wrapped in a blanket, staring at her ceiling fan. The silence rang louder than traffic. Her phone buzzed. A text from her best friend, Kyra. Kira, heard what happened. Girl, you okay? Need me to pull up? Nyla didn't reply. She opened her phone's calendar instead, scrolled past meetings she no longer had, stared at the little red circle around today's date. Then she opened another app. Period tracker, 47 days late. Her breath caught. No, she hadn't even processed it before now. The missed pills. The stress. The night after the company gala, when Damon had kissed her in the stairwell and whispered, "Just tonight, no consequences." She had been careful, mostly, but her gut had been whispering something else. The nausea, the fatigue, the cravings. She sat up slowly. No job, no income, and possibly no control over what came next. The drugstore test confirmed it that night. 2 pink lines. She stared at them for nearly 20 minutes, then another hour. Then somehow she laughed. Dry, bitter, short. "Congratulations, Nyla," she whispered. "You just lost your job and gained a whole new life." But even in that moment, she made a promise to herself. He would never know. Not out of revenge, but because Damon Kessler didn't need a child for redemption. And Nyla Benton didn't need his pity. What she needed was to stand again. The next morning, Nyla packed what little she had left in 2 suitcases. Her apartment lease was ending in 2 weeks, but she didn't wait that long. The moment she saw the pregnancy test, she knew California was no longer home. She hadn't told a soul. Not Kira, not her mother, still recovering, not anyone at Kessler Innovations. There was a quiet fear in her that if she said the words out loud, "I'm pregnant," with his child, she'd break into pieces she couldn't put back together. Her plan was simple. Disappear. Start fresh. Raise her child in peace. By the 3rd day, she'd bought a one-way bus ticket to Atlanta. It wasn't glamorous, but her aunt lived there. And unlike Damon, her aunt had never turned her away. The trip was long. 2 days across state lines, through endless roads and small towns. She spent most of it staring out the window, holding her phone tightly, deleting old photos she didn't want reminders of. The rooftop gala picture, gone. His text messages, gone. The one voice note where he said her name like a secret, gone. But some memories don't delete easily. She remembered the night vividly. The way the city lights reflected off his glass balcony, the way he'd poured her wine and told her, "You have more drive than half my executive team," the way she'd laughed, blushing, thinking he saw her, really saw her, not just as another employee. That night had been reckless, yes, but it had also been real. For one brief night, he wasn't the CEO. He was Damon, a man with gentle eyes and a voice that made her forget her own rules. And then, by sunrise, he'd built his walls again. By the time she reached Atlanta, her eyes were swollen, her legs numb, and her spirit bruised but not broken. Her aunt, Claudine, opened the door with a surprised expression. "Lord, child, you didn't even tell me you were coming." Nyla smiled faintly. "I needed a change." "From what? You look like you've been running." She wanted to lie, but she couldn't. "I lost my job," she said quietly. "And I found out something else." Her aunt tilted her head. "You're expecting, aren't you?" Nyla froze. "How did you—" Claudine chuckled softly. "Honey, I've seen that look before. When your mama had you, she had that same fire. Scared, tired, but fierce. Come on in. You're staying here as long as you need." The next few months were hard. Morning sickness, sleepless nights, job applications with no replies. She used her savings to pay for prenatal care, but every dollar she spent felt like it was draining her future. Still, she refused to call him. Damon had power, influence, money. But what he didn't have was empathy. He'd seen her beg for a chance that day in his office, and he'd looked right through her. She couldn't forget that. One evening, she sat at her aunt's porch, rubbing her belly as the sky turned pink over the Atlanta skyline. She whispered softly, "You're going to be loved. I don't care what it takes." She didn't have much, but she had faith, and that had to be enough. The months rolled on. By winter, she was 7 months along and doing small freelance gigs. From home, logo designs, email campaigns, anything she could find. Claudine would sometimes ask, "You sure you don't want to tell him, even for child support?" Nyla always gave the same answer. He'd see this as a problem to fix, not a life to cherish. Her aunt nodded. "Then you raise this child your way. No man can claim what he didn't value." That line stayed with Nyla. It became her mantra. The night she went into labor was quiet. Rain tapped against the window. Claudine had gone to bed early, and Nyla was reading when the first contraction hit. She tried to breathe through it, but by the third one she was on the floor, clutching her phone. When they reached the small community hospital, the nurse rushed her in. "You're 8 centimeters already. Let's go." The pain was fierce, deep, rhythmic, unrelenting. But she didn't scream. She held on. She thought of her mother. She thought of the job she lost. She thought of the man who'd never know. And when the baby's cry filled the room, her tears fell again, but this time they were grateful ones. The nurse smiled. "It's a boy." Nyla looked down. Small, beautiful, brown skin with a golden undertone, tiny fingers reaching toward her, eyes barely open but light brown, just like Damon's. Her chest swelled with emotion. "Hi, Micah," she whispered. "Welcome to my world." Days turned into weeks. She learned motherhood like survival, through instinct, through love, through mistakes. There were nights she cried while he slept, wondering how she'd afford diapers. Days she smiled through exhaustion, watching him grab her finger and giggle. When she saw his first smile, she thought, "Maybe I'm enough after all." Years passed. She never told Micah about his father. When he started school, she simply said, "It's you and me, buddy, always." Her small freelance jobs grew into something bigger. By the time Micah was 5, Nyla had registered her own company, Benton Creative. She built websites for small businesses, ran campaigns for startups, even hired 2 assistants who admired her determination. She never realized it, but people started calling her the woman who built something out of nothing. Still, some nights she'd lie awake, thinking about the man she'd once known. Did he ever wonder where she went? Did he ever think about that night? Or was she just another blurred face in a file of forgettable employees? Those thoughts came and went like passing clouds, until the day she received the conference email. Subject: Invitation to speak. Tech Forward, Atlanta, 2025. Nyla blinked. Her company had been nominated for Rising Digital Agency of the Year. The message continued. "We'd be honored to have you as a guest panelist on digital brand growth and resilience in tech marketing." Resilience. That word hit deep. She thought of every sleepless night, every rejection, every sacrifice. And now she was being recognized, not for surviving him, but for becoming her own person. The day of the conference, she stood in front of her mirror, smoothing her navy blue blazer. Her reflection stared back, poised, confident, radiant. Claudine peeked in. "Look at you, girl. You sure that's the same one who came here crying 6 years ago?" Nyla smiled faintly. "I'm not her anymore." Her aunt nodded. "Then go show them." The hotel ballroom buzzed with energy. Cameras, flashing lights, hundreds of attendees. Nyla's pulse quickened as she walked toward the stage entrance. She'd been in rooms like this before, but this time she belonged. She adjusted her badge, took her seat beside the other panelists, and waited for her name to be announced. When the moderator called, "Next, we have Nyla Benton, founder of Benton Creative." A success story of innovation, perseverance, and heart, she smiled and stood. Applause followed. But the moment she stepped onto the stage, something in the crowd shifted. From the corner of her eye, she caught a familiar figure. Her body froze for a split second. The posture, the suit, the gaze that pierced straight through her. Damon Kessler. He was sitting in the front row, watching her. Expression unreadable. Her throat tightened, but she kept walking. 6 years ago, he'd fired her without mercy. Now, he was sitting there, in her city, watching her take the stage he never imagined she'd own. She reached the microphone, steadied her breath, and smiled at the crowd. "Good morning, everyone," she began. "Today, I want to talk about what happens when life falls apart, and how sometimes it's the best thing that could have happened to you." The audience nodded. Some even clapped softly. But Damon didn't move. His eyes never left her. And for the first time in years, Nyla felt that old ache again. Not love, not anger, but something deeper. A memory of what was lost, and what might still be unfinished. Have you ever been punished for something without anyone asking why? Maybe you've had a boss who never saw the full picture, or a moment that changed your life forever. Nyla lost everything in one meeting. But what if that loss was the start of something far greater? Do you believe people deserve a second chance, even the ones who hurt you? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Like if you felt Nyla's pain. Share this with someone who needs to be reminded of their worth. And if you want to know what happens when the past comes knocking, subscribe now. Nyla stepped off the stage to a wave of polite applause, but her heart was hammering. She kept her eyes ahead, thanked the moderator, and moved toward the hallway behind the curtains, where the green room was quiet, and where no one would see her trembling hands. Her stride remained steady, her face calm, but inside, the echo of Damon Kessler's stare followed her like heat. She hadn't seen him in 6 years, not on social media, not in business press. She avoided his interviews, skipped tech magazines, muted keywords, out of sight, out of mind. But now, there he was, bold, composed, and sitting dead center in her crowd. What was he doing in Atlanta? Why now? And why did it still matter? She found an empty corner backstage, sat on a stool, and pulled out her phone, pretending to check her calendar while her thoughts raced. Maybe he didn't recognize her at first. Maybe he was only here for the event, and seeing her was a coincidence. Maybe he'd leave quietly. She should have left first, but it was too late. Footsteps approached, deliberate, heavy, familiar. She glanced up. He stood there, taller than she remembered, but the same intense energy. Crisp grey blazer, no tie. His posture still screamed control. But his eyes were searching. "Nyla," he said softly. Her spine stiffened. "Mr. Kessler." He raised a brow. "We're still on last names?" She stood, arms crossed. "That's what you called me, right before you ended my entire career." A pause. "I deserve that," he said. "But I also came to say, I didn't expect to see you today." She scoffed. "This is my city now. You're the one who flew in." "I was invited by the organizers. I had no idea you'd be speaking." "So, what now?" She asked. "You want to talk about that day in your office, or the part where you didn't even ask me what happened before you fired me?" He looked away for a beat, then back. "I've made a lot of decisions in my life. Some were strategic, some were impulsive. That one?" His voice dropped. "That was cruel." Nyla blinked. She hadn't expected him to say it out loud. "Why are you really here?" she asked, softer now. "To listen," he said. "To tell you I remember that night, and that I never forgot you." She inhaled slowly. "That night was 6 years ago, and it ended the moment I left your building." His jaw tightened. "You disappeared. No trace, no calls, nothing. I didn't owe you anything after how you treated me." They stood in silence for a long beat. "I was wrong," he said again. "I should have listened. I should have cared." Her throat tightened. But she wouldn't cry. Not this time. She nodded once. Well, thanks for the apology. Now, if you'll excuse me. Nyla. His voice caught her. I'm not here to just apologize. She didn't respond. I'm here for business, he said finally. But if you're open to it, maybe coffee. No pressure. She narrowed her eyes. I don't think coffee fixes 6 years of silence. It doesn't, he admitted. But maybe it starts something new. Later that evening, Nyla sat on her aunt's couch, staring at her untouched dinner. Claudine looked over. You've barely touched your plate. What's on your mind? Damon was at the event, Nyla said without looking up. Claudine paused, fork mid-air. You're... Damon? Yes. She whistled low. And how did that go? Nyla shrugged. He wants to talk. Coffee, maybe. Claudine raised an eyebrow. You gonna tell him? Nyla exhaled. Tell him what? That he has a son he didn't ask for? That I raised Micah without his help because he tossed me out like I was disposable? Her aunt set her plate down. You owe him nothing. But if he's trying to be a better man, maybe you hear him out. Nyla rubbed her temples. I don't know if I trust myself around him. He gets in my head. Claudine smiled gently. That's because a part of you still cares. Doesn't mean you forgive him. Doesn't mean you forget. The next day, Nyla met Damon at a small cafe near the event center. Public, neutral, safe. He stood when she walked in. That hadn't changed. Thanks for meeting me, he said. She nodded and sat. Let's not waste time. What do you want? To talk, he said. About then. About now. About what I missed. She sipped her tea and said nothing. I built a lot in the last 6 years, he continued. But not everything I built meant something. You meant something. She scoffed lightly. You had a funny way of showing it. I was arrogant, he admitted. And scared. I've never told anyone that. But that night, the night of the gala, it felt different. Real. You shut me out the next day, she said flatly. I panicked, he confessed. I didn't know how to handle what I felt, so I buried it in work and control. I hurt you. She stared at him. Do you think saying all this changes what you did? No, he said quietly, but maybe it shows I'm not that man anymore. Nyla leaned back. People say a lot of things after they've had time to think. But while I was carrying a baby, scraping pennies and hiding from the man who cut me off without listening, you were living free. He looked down. Guilty. So tell me, she continued, why should I believe you now? He met her eyes. Because I came back, not to fix things, but to try and understand what I broke. The conversation ended without a conclusion, but as Nyla walked home, her head buzzed with questions. Could people change? Did she want them to? Did she want him to? The wind was calm that afternoon. Sunlight filtered through the cafe's wide windows, warming the edge of the booth where Nyla sat with Damon. The conversation had slowed. Words had thinned into cautious pauses. Neither of them wanted to say too much, or maybe they just didn't know how. She toyed with her spoon, eyes flicking out the window toward the plaza where a few parents walked by, children skipping behind them. Damon sat still across from her, quiet, studying her face like he was trying to read a language he used to know. I should go, she said, voice low but steady. I have someone waiting. He nodded, lips pressed. Understood. She stood slowly, adjusting her coat. As she reached into her purse for her keys, a familiar voice rang out from the front entrance. Mummy. Nyla's breath caught. She turned, and there he was. Micah. Her heart thudded. She hadn't expected him so soon. The little boy darted in, cradling a small plastic robot in his hand, grinning wide. Miss Claudine said you were here. He chirped, hurrying up to her. Nyla bent down, catching him in a quick hug. Hey, baby, you finished early? He nodded. She said I could come say hi. Nyla kissed the top of his head, then stood up again. It was only then she noticed the silence behind her. The heavy, loaded silence. Damon hadn't moved. His eyes were locked on Micah. Nyla turned slowly. Damon's expression had changed. Subtly, but unmistakably. His eyes weren't wide. They weren't shocked. They were searching, as if trying to confirm something he couldn't believe, something he wasn't sure he wanted to. Micah tilted his head at the stranger. "Who's that?" Nyla froze. Before she could speak, Damon leaned forward slightly, voice quiet but warm. "Hi there. What's your name?" "Micah," the boy said cheerfully, gripping her hand. "I'm 6. Damon blinked. 6. Exactly 6. He didn't ask another question. He didn't need to. His gaze drifted over the boy's eyes. Light brown, warm, wide. The same shade he saw every morning in the mirror. The air grew heavier. Nyla felt her pulse spike. She wasn't ready for this. Not here. Not like this. "Micah," she said softly, "why don't you go pick out a cookie? I'll be right there, okay?" Micah smiled and skipped toward the counter. As soon as he was out of earshot, Damon stood up slowly. "You didn't tell me." Nyla folded her arms. "I didn't owe you that." He ran a hand over his jaw. "You carried my child. Alone." She met his gaze. "After you fired me. After you looked me in the face and made it clear I didn't matter. You wanted control, Damon. But a baby isn't something you control." His jaw clenched. "I would have done the right thing. I didn't want the right thing. I didn't want forced support or public drama. I wanted peace. For me, and for him." His voice softened. "You thought I'd hurt him?" "No," she said, her voice trembling now. "I thought you'd erase him, like you erased me." The words landed between them like a slap. Damon exhaled slowly, guilt bleeding into his eyes. "I don't know what to say," he murmured. Nyla stepped back. "Then don't say anything. Just understand why I chose what I did." They stood like that, unmoving, two former lovers caught in a storm they didn't see coming. A tiny voice broke the silence. "Mummy, they gave me 2 cookies. Can I eat one now?" Nyla turned, breathing in hard to pull herself together. "Just one, baby." Micah nodded and sat at a table nearby. Damon watched him, emotion swimming in his face. "He looks like me." "He's got your eyes," Nyla admitted. "And your strength," he added quietly. She glanced at him. "You don't know him." "Let me," Damon said. Her arms tightened across her chest. "It's not that easy. I'm not asking for easy. I'm asking for time. For honesty." Nyla looked away. "He has a routine, a life, stability. You don't just walk in and rewrite that." "I'm not trying to rewrite anything," Damon said. "I want to learn what already exists." She looked back at him. "And what about me, Damon? You're not just walking into his life. You're walking back into mine." His face softened. "I know." She stared at him for a long moment, then finally nodded. "We'll talk, but it'll be on my terms." "Of course." That evening, Nyla tucked Micah into bed. The boy was tired, full of sugar and stories, already halfway to sleep. "Mommy," he whispered. "Yes? Was that man your friend?" She paused. "A long time ago, yes. He looked at me funny." She smiled gently. He was surprised. "You're a pretty special kid." Micah grinned, eyes already fluttering shut. "You say that all the time." "Because it's true." As she turned off the lamp and walked to the door, her phone buzzed. "Damon, I won't push." "I'll wait, but thank you." For today. She stared at the screen. So simple, so unlike him. Then she replied, "We'll talk, but slowly, one step at a time." Damon Kessler had built empires. He'd turned failing ventures into million-dollar success stories, walked stages as a keynote speaker, and closed deals with men twice his age. But that night, alone in a luxury hotel suite in Atlanta, none of it meant anything. Not when the face of a 6-year-old boy, with his eyes, his grin, his energy, kept flickering behind his eyelids every time he blinked. He poured himself a glass of water, paced to the window, and looked out at the skyline. He wasn't used to feeling off balance, but today had cracked something open in him. He had a son, a living, breathing boy with questions and curls and a love for cookies, and he hadn't even known the child existed until hours ago. The guilt hit him in waves. He'd fired Nyla Benton in the coldest way possible, not even stopping to ask why she'd failed to deliver that deck, not pausing to wonder if something else was going on. He didn't give her space to explain. He remembered thinking, emotion wastes time. Back then, he believed detachment was leadership. That kindness was weakness. But now he couldn't stop thinking about what his coldness had cost him. Son! 6 years of memories. A woman he once held in his arms and now had to beg for time. The next morning, Damon was up early. He checked his calendar, full, of course. Calls, panels, a meeting with investors, but none of it held his attention. Instead, he found himself scrolling through photos on his phone, looking for the ones from the night of the gala, the night everything changed. There it was. A shot of Nyla, laughing beside him at the rooftop bar, holding a glass of wine. Her smile wide, her eyes soft. She had been magnetic that night. The only woman in the room who hadn't tried to impress him, and the only one who actually had. He clicked the screen off, then reached for his suit jacket. Today he'd make space, not just in his schedule but in his heart. Nyla was running late. Micah's school had called about a permission slip she forgot to sign. Her email was flooded with client follow-ups, and Claudine was out visiting a cousin, so there was no one to help juggle the morning. By 10:30 a.m., she was just settling into her home office when her phone buzzed. Damon, would you be open to a lunch meeting? No pressure. You pick the place. Just time. She stared at the message. Part of her wanted to ignore it. To pretend yesterday never happened. To keep the wall up, tall, wide, and safe. But another part of her, the part that still remembered how his hand felt on the small of her back once, or how he'd whispered her name like it was a secret. That part hesitated. She typed slowly. 1 hour. Noon. Mercy Cafe on 5th. The restaurant was small and locally owned. No flash. No buzz. Just good food and quiet booths. When Damon arrived, Nyla was already seated with a cup of tea in front of her. She didn't smile, but she didn't look away either. He slid into the seat across from her. Thanks for coming. She folded her hands. Let's make this simple. Understood. They ordered. Grilled chicken salad for her, blackened salmon for him, and waited in silence until the server walked away. Then Nyla spoke. Micah doesn't know who you are. He doesn't need confusion. So if you're serious about being present, you'll do it slowly, respectfully, without disruption. Damon nodded. Agreed. He's not a trophy, not a project. You don't earn points for showing up. I know. She leaned in slightly. Then tell me what you want. He paused. I want to know him, but I also want to know you, now. Not who you were when we first met, who you are after all you've built. Because I missed it. Nyla's jaw tensed. You missed it because you didn't ask. I know that too. Silence stretched between them again. She looked down at her tea. Micah asks a lot of questions. I've always answered them in ways that protect him. Not lie, just protect. You walking in changes that... I'll follow your lead, Damon said carefully. She finally looked up at him. And when you get bored? When it gets hard? When being a dad isn't exciting? His voice didn't waver. Then I stay anyway. The food came. They ate in mostly silence, but it wasn't cold. It was cautious. A test of new boundaries. A beginning of something neither of them knew how to name yet. When the check came, Damon reached for it. Nyla didn't stop him. As they walked out into the sunlight, she turned to him. You can come to the park this Saturday. He likes the slides and the robot building kit. Damon's brows lifted slightly. Not in surprise, but in appreciation. I'll be there. Later that evening, Claudine returned to find Nyla sitting on the porch, staring at the sky. "You look like someone who had a whole conversation with their past," Claudine said, dropping her bag inside. Nyla didn't laugh. She just nodded. "Maybe I did." And she sighed. "It's not clean or easy, but I'm not angry like I thought I'd be. I'm tired of carrying it." Claudine sat beside her. "You ready to let him in?" "I'm ready to give him space to try," Nyla replied. "Not for me, for Micah. And if he messes that up, I'll show him the same door he gave me 6 years ago." Now Claudine smiled. "That's the woman I raised alongside your mama." Saturday morning came with clear skies and a quiet breeze. The park near Nyla's apartment was already stirring. Joggers on the trail, families, setting up picnics, and the soft whir of strollers rolling over concrete paths. Micah bounced beside her as they walked toward the playground, robot kit tucked under one arm. "Will Miss Claudine come today?" he asked, skipping a little. "No, baby, it's just you and me," Nyla replied. "And someone else." "Who?" She hesitated. "A friend." Micah nodded, like it didn't matter. He was more focused on the slides. As they reached a bench near the edge of the playground, Nyla spotted Damon standing under a tree, dressed down for the first time. No blazer, no leather shoes. Just jeans, sneakers, and a navy pullover that somehow made him look even more out of place, like a CEO undercover. He saw them and started walking over. Micah ran ahead toward the play area. Nyla stood still, arms crossed, watching Damon approach. "You came," she said. "I said I would." She nodded once, then motioned to the bench. "We sit, we observe. That's the rule." "Understood." They sat in silence, eyes both fixed on Micah. The boy had already claimed the climbing wall, making robot sounds to himself. "He talks to himself sometimes," Nyla said. "It's his way of imagining things." Damon smiled faintly. "I used to do the same. I'd pretend I was inventing flying machines in my room. I once tied fan blades to my backpack." Nyla chuckled softly. "Please, tell me there's a picture of that." "There is," he said, "but it's buried somewhere my assistant will never find." Another pause passed. "He's smart," Damon said after a moment. "Really smart. He's also stubborn, curious. He never stops asking questions. I can see that." Nyla turned toward him slightly. "This isn't easy for me. I know. You weren't just a fling, Damon. I cared. That night we—" She stopped, catching herself. "It wasn't nothing." Damon nodded slowly. "I cared too. I just didn't know how to handle what came after." Nyla glanced at him. "And now?" He met her eyes. "Now I want to learn how—" They both turned back to watch Micah again. "He keeps looking over here," Damon said. "He's wondering why you're watching him and not playing with him," she replied. Damon looked uncertain. "Would it be all right if I tried?" Nyla hesitated. "Go slow. Let him lead." Damon stood and walked toward the playground. Nyla watched from the bench, heart in her throat. Micah spotted him and squinted. "Are you the friend?" "I am," Damon said, kneeling to eye level. "You like robots?" Micah nodded slowly, eyeing him with a cautious curiosity. "I brought one too," Damon added, pulling a small metallic gadget from his jacket pocket. "It doesn't do much yet. I was hoping maybe you could help." Micah's eyes lit up. "You build them too?" "I try. But I'm not as good as you, I bet." Micah looked at the robot, then back at Damon. After a moment he said, "We can share. Mine has a claw arm. Yours can be its backup." Damon smiled. "Sounds like a plan." They sat cross-legged on the grass, the two robots between them. Nyla didn't join. She stayed on the bench, arms still folded, not out of defensiveness, but discipline. She needed to see this for what it was. Not hope, not fantasy. Just a man and a boy meeting halfway. And still, it stung. Because no matter how careful she'd been, no matter how strong she'd stayed, a part of her had always wondered what this would feel like. To see the man she once loved laughing beside the son they unknowingly made together. 30 minutes passed. Damon was patient. He let Micah explain the controls. He asked questions. When Micah started adjusting the pieces, Damon didn't correct him. He watched. Let him lead. At one point, Micah paused and said, "You're not like the other grown-ups." "Oh?" Damon asked. "They get bored after 10 minutes. You didn't." "Maybe I just like robots." "Or maybe you like me," Micah said with a grin. Damon laughed. "I think you're onto something." Nyla stood and slowly made her way over. "Okay, genius. Time to head home." Micah groaned. "Can he come again?" Damon looked up at Nyla. She held his gaze. "We'll see." Micah packed up his kit. Damon helped, then stood and offered Nyla a small nod. "Thank you," he said quietly. She didn't respond right away, but as they turned to leave, she glanced back once. Damon was still watching, but this time, not with regret, with something closer to reverence, like he finally understood what he'd missed. Later that night, Nyla sat on her bed with her laptop open, reviewing emails. One stood out. A local magazine wanted to feature Benton Creative in their next issue. Another opportunity, another win. But her mind kept drifting to the park, to Micah's laughter, to Damon's silence. He hadn't tried to take space. He hadn't pushed or overstepped. He had just shown up. For now, that was enough. But Nyla knew something else too. The past always catches up. And whether Damon had truly changed or not, only time would tell. 3 days after the park meetup, Nyla was seated in a sleek conference room in downtown Atlanta, the kind with marble floors, frosted glass doors, and enough silence to hear your own heartbeat. She wasn't nervous, not anymore. Her confidence had been hard-earned. Across the table sat Lars Monroe, a high-profile investor from New York known for backing minority-owned businesses in the tech and branding space. His assistant had reached out 2 weeks ago after catching wind of Benton Creative's consistent growth and impact in the southern market. "We've reviewed your agency's numbers, Ms. Benton," Lars said, tapping his fingers lightly. "Your overhead is tight, your client return rate is impressive, and your campaign results, frankly, speak for themselves." Nyla nodded, keeping her expression calm. "Your storytelling approach to branding," he continued, "has put small companies on the map." "I believe in brand intimacy," she replied. "People buy stories before they buy products." Lars smiled. "That line belongs in a book. I've thought about writing one," she said without missing a beat. He laughed. "Then let's talk partnership. My firm's offering a seed investment to scale your team and operations. We'd retain a minority stake and give you access to our growth consultants. In return, you expand into Charlotte and Miami within the next 18 months. Nyla didn't flinch. "And you'll trust a black woman running an independent agency to lead that expansion without interference?" Lars leaned forward, steepling his fingers. "I wouldn't be sitting here if I didn't." The moment settled. She didn't say yes. Not yet. But she smiled. "I'll have my lawyer review the terms. If everything checks out, we move forward." "Smart woman," he said, standing to shake her hand. As she left the building, the sun felt brighter on her skin. She slipped on her sunglasses and pulled out her phone. One missed call, Damon Kessler. One new text, "Can we talk today?" Later that afternoon, she met Damon at a rooftop cafe. Casual, quiet, high enough to feel above the noise. He looked tired. Not messy, just worn in a way that said, thinking too much, sleeping too little. "You okay?" she asked, slipping into the seat opposite him. He exhaled. "You're doing well." She tilted her head. "You've been watching?" "I saw the investor announcement. Monroe's firm is no joke." She nodded. "He sees the value, and he doesn't need to micromanage me to feel important." Ouch. Damon didn't flinch. "I deserved that." She sipped her tea. "Why did you call?" He paused. "I just needed to see you today, after Saturday." I keep thinking about how much I missed. I don't want to fall behind again. You're not entitled to catch up, Damon, she said quietly. I know. I'm asking, not assuming. Nyla studied him. He wasn't grandstanding. There was no charm act, no CEO voice. Just a man in a grey sweater, trying to find footing in a world that had moved on without him. After a beat, she said, I had a meeting with Lars Monroe this morning. He offered me capital to expand. Damon blinked. That's huge. It is. Are you going to take it? I don't know yet. He looked surprised. Why not? Because expansion means letting people in. Sharing control. Trusting that their support won't shift into dominance. She set her cup down. I've built this with my bare hands. Every dollar, every campaign, every hire, mine. Giving up a piece of that isn't easy. He nodded slowly. I get that. She leaned back. Do you? He didn't respond right away. Then he said, When I started Kessler Innovations, I burned through 3 partners in 2 years. Couldn't let go, couldn't trust. It wasn't about the money. It was about pride. I needed to be the one holding the strings, and I hurt people because of it. Like me. Especially you. The silence between them hummed. I'm not asking for shares in your company, Damon added, but I am asking for one in your life, if you'll let me earn it. Nyla didn't respond, not yet, because something in her heart was beginning to soften, but her mind hadn't caught up. That evening, Nyla returned home to find Micah drawing on the living room floor. Robots again. He looked up. Did you see Mr. Damon today? She blinked. Why do you ask? He said he might visit this weekend. I just wanted to know if you're still mad at him. Her chest tightened. What makes you think I'm mad? Micah shrugged. I don't know. Grown-ups don't yell when they're mad. They get quiet. She knelt beside him. I'm not mad, baby. I'm figuring it out. He held up a drawing. I made this one for him. She looked down. It was a robot, tall, square shoulders, holding a tiny hand beside it. The smaller figure had curly hair and a beaming smile. Her throat thickened. He said he's not used to being around kids, Micah said. But I think he likes it. I think so too. Micah yawned, already drifting toward sleep. Nyla kissed his cheek and whispered, Good night, little man. Upstairs, in the quiet of her bedroom, she opened her laptop. Instead of working, she stared at the blinking cursor. Then she typed pros and cons, letting Damon in prose. Key, he's trying. A, he hasn't lied. TJ Micah likes him. A, he sees me now. Cons, A, he once didn't care. A, he could disappear again. I don't know if I've truly healed. This isn't a movie. There are no guarantees. She sat back, reading the list twice. Then she added one more line to the bottom. Risk doesn't always mean wrong. The next day, Nyla stepped into her studio space just after sunrise. The place was quiet. Still. A low hum from the printer echoed faintly. A few sketches and strategy boards lined the back wall, and on the center table sat a fresh pot of coffee left behind by her assistant. She was early, by choice. Her mind had been racing all night. She'd told herself she'd moved on, that the version of Damon Kessler who fired her would never find space again in her world. But Saturday happened, then the cafe, and now this stirring in her chest. It felt too dangerous to ignore. She stared at the window, then picked up her phone. One new text. Damon, still want to grab a drink tonight? Or should I back off for a while? She typed, You can meet me at Reed's Lounge. 7 p.m. 1 drink. That's it. Then hit send before she could regret it. Reed's was nothing like the places Damon was used to. No private rooms, no reserved rooftop tables. Just soft music, dim lighting, and real conversations. Nyla walked in wearing black high-waisted slacks and a silk blouse, sharp but relaxed. She didn't dress for him. She dressed to remind herself who she was. He was already seated near the back, a glass of bourbon in front of him. Hey, he said, standing. She slid into the booth. Just one drink. I remember. They ordered quietly, then sat in the pause. Damon leaned back. You're different. How so? Still sharp, still focused. But now, you don't bend. Nyla looked at him. I used to bend for people who didn't deserve it. He nodded slowly. Like me. She didn't correct him. He added, I think I expected you to still be the girl who waited outside my office for feedback. I didn't prepare for the woman who might never need to hear me speak again. She tilted her head. Then why are you here? Because needing someone isn't the same as being weak, and I need this time with you, even if you choose not to let me back in. Nyla took a sip of her drink. When did you change? I didn't realize how broken I was until I built everything I wanted and still felt hollow. She met his gaze. And what do you want now? He hesitated. Something real. Not built on control, not rushed, just honest. Their drink sat untouched between them. Micah asked about you again, she said softly. Said you weren't like other grown-ups. I liked that, Damon admitted. Made me feel like I had something to offer. You're trying, Nyla said, pausing. But trying now doesn't erase what happened then. I know. Then understand this, she said firmly. I will never need you to fix anything. Not me. Not Micah. You come in, you stay humble, or you don't come at all. Damon nodded. Understood. The waiter dropped off the check. Damon reached for it. Nyla didn't stop him. As they walked out into the crisp night air, Damon stopped near her car. Do you regret not telling me? He asked. About Micah? Nyla looked at him. Every woman has to decide what gives her peace. For me, it was protecting him and myself from a man who didn't know how to care. His jaw flexed. But I also know, she continued, that we all change. Sometimes too late, sometimes right on time. They stood in silence for a long moment. Then she opened her car door. Good night, Damon. He watched her drive away, the taillights fading into the dark. Later that night, Nyla sat on her bed, brushing out her hair slowly. Claudine entered with a towel over her shoulder. You met with him. Nyla didn't ask how she knew. Claudine always knew. One drink, Nyla said. And? He's not pushing. Claudine sat down at the edge of the bed. Is that all you needed? Nyla stared at her reflection in the mirror. I don't know what I need, but I know I don't need him to be who he used to be. You want him to be better. I want him to mean it. Meanwhile, Damon sat alone in his hotel suite, staring at a photo he'd taken. Micah holding the robot. He didn't smile. He just sat there, wishing he'd seen it all sooner. Wishing he hadn't learned how to love this late. But maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late. The ballroom at the Atlanta Women in Business Awards was polished, grand, and packed. Crystal chandeliers floated above sleek tables adorned with silver linens and white roses. Industry leaders, public officials, and media representatives filled the room. Nyla stood near the event entrance, hands clasped in front of her, trying to stay grounded. Her name was on the list of finalists for Entrepreneur of the Year. She hadn't expected it. Honestly, she hadn't wanted it, but her team had submitted her profile behind her back. And now, here she was, a finalist, dressed in a deep emerald gown that hugged, her figure with quiet elegance, her curls pulled back, her posture straight. Benton Creative was no longer a small name. It was rising. Her assistant, Carla, leaned in. You okay? I'm fine. You don't look fine. Nyla smiled faintly. I didn't expect to feel this exposed. Carla laughed. You're about to get honored for working twice as hard with half the help. Own that. Across the room, a familiar figure entered. Tall, broad-shouldered, in a perfectly cut black suit. Damon. He spotted her almost immediately, offered a nod, then made his way to the back. No grand gesture, no approach, just presence. It was exactly what she'd asked for. The ceremony began with a keynote speech. Then came the recognitions, Innovator of the Year. rising star, community champion. Finally, the presenter stepped up for the top category. Our Entrepreneur of the Year award goes to a woman who built something out of nothing, while raising a child, breaking into a crowded market, and maintaining integrity at every step. Nyla's stomach twisted. She represents resilience, precision, and vision. Ladies and gentlemen, Nyla Benton. Applause erupted. For a split second, she stood frozen. Then she moved, slow but sure, to the stage. The microphone felt cold in her hand. She cleared her throat. 6 years ago, I lost a job that I thought defined me, she said, her voice steady. That loss felt like the end, but sometimes losing something opens a door you didn't even know you were locked behind. Silence fell. I built Benton Creative not to prove anything, but to survive. And then to serve. And now to lead. Applause again. She held up a hand gently, signaling thanks. But let me be clear, she added, locking eyes with no one and everyone at once. This didn't happen because someone gave me a chance. It happened because I took one, when no one else would. The room applauded louder. She smiled once, then stepped down. Later, as guests mingled with champagne and dessert, Damon approached quietly. You were brilliant, he said. Thank you. You didn't have to mention the job, he added, eyes meeting hers. I didn't do it for you, she replied. I did it for me. And for every woman who's ever been dismissed and had to start over in silence. He nodded. And you changed the narrative. I reclaimed it. They stood together in silence for a beat. Then a voice behind them interrupted. Well, look who it is. Damon Kessler. Didn't think I'd see you this far south unless it was a board meeting. They turned. Miles Carter, an old Kessler Innovations board member, smooth-talking, arrogant, still in his late -40 seconds and still somehow stuck in 1998. Damon gave a tight smile. Miles looked at Nyla, then chuckled. Let me guess, this one's your PR fixer? Nyla's eyes narrowed slightly. Actually, Damon said, voice calm, she's the reason I understand what leadership should have looked like years ago. Miles blinked. Oh? Nyla stepped forward. And I'm also the reason a dozen small businesses found their footing this year. But feel free to keep guessing. Miles forced a chuckle. Feisty. Successful, she corrected. Damon watched the exchange, silent but visibly supportive. Miles raised his glass and slithered away. Nyla exhaled. Men like that are exhausting. You handled him. She looked at Damon. He's not the first who underestimated me. Won't be the last. No, Damon said, voice low. But he's probably the last one who'll ever say it to your face when I'm around. Her lips curved slightly. You don't need to defend me. I don't, but I will, because now I see you. She stared at him. And what exactly do you see? A woman who built her life back from nothing, who chose motherhood and dignity over compromise, who doesn't need me, but who I want to be worthy of anyway. The words lingered. Nyla didn't respond. Not yet. But something in her finally loosened. That night, she placed her award on the top shelf of her office, not out of pride, but as a reminder of who she used to be, of who she refused to become again, and of the man who stood quietly behind her, not in front, not over, but beside her. The next evening, Nyla sat on her back porch, toes bare, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. The spring air was cool but calming. Micah was upstairs with Claudine, working on a science project that involved paper tubes, glitter, and way too much tape. Her phone buzzed. Damon, are you free? I need to tell you something. Nothing heavy. She stared at the message for a long moment before replying. Meet me at the Dwell Cafe. 20 minutes. She didn't need anything heavy, but she needed something real. Damon arrived first. He chose a corner seat with low lighting and an open view of the street outside. His suit was more casual this time, a light blazer, no tie. His hair was slightly tousled, a detail that somehow made him more approachable. When Nyla entered, he stood. She slid into the seat. "What's on your mind?" He hesitated, then said, "My father left when I was 8. She blinked. That wasn't what she expected. "He didn't say goodbye," Damon continued. "Just walked out, took a few things, never came back. My mom worked double shifts for the next 10 years, trying to keep the lights on." Nyla watched him quietly. "I promised myself I'd never be like him," Damon said. "So I worked, pushed, built, controlled. But somewhere in the middle of all that, I forgot what presence even looked like." "You think you became him?" "I became the absence, just with nicer suits and a better title." She folded her arms. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I don't want to be that man for Micah." The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. "I don't know what I'm doing," he admitted, "but I know I want to be there, even if it's messy, even if I don't get it right." Nyla nodded slowly. "He doesn't need perfection. He needs consistency." Damon leaned forward. "What about you?" She looked away. "What about me? What do you need?" She paused. "To feel like I'm not carrying this whole thing alone." He nodded. "You've built something beautiful," he said. "And I've spent years building things that never mattered half as much." They sat in the quiet, not as exes, not as adversaries, but as two people trying to unlearn the past. 2 days later, Nyla was invited to a regional branding gala, a quieter event with fewer cameras but more potential for new client connections. She almost said no, but Carla, her assistant, pushed. "You just won Entrepreneur of the Year," Carla said. "Show up, shake hands. Let people see your face while your name is still hot." So Nyla got dressed, dark burgundy dress, modest but powerful. She slipped on her heels, picked up her phone, and hesitated. Then typed, "Are you free tonight?" Damon replied, "Always." They arrived separately. The gala was hosted in a private lounge downtown, dim lights, champagne, trays, and jazz playing low under the buzz of conversation. Nyla walked in first, greeting a few local business owners. She never felt out of place anymore, not even in rooms like this. Damon entered 20 minutes later. He kept a respectful distance, letting her do her thing. But when they finally stood beside each other near the far wall, a few heads turned. Whispers floated. "That's her? Isn't that the guy from Kessler? Are they?" Nyla leaned in. "We don't have to answer any of those questions." Damon smiled. "Good. I didn't rehearse." She laughed softly. They didn't touch. No holding hands. No lingering gazes. But the space between them said enough. There was a story there, not yet labeled, not yet claimed, but undeniably present. Near the end of the night, a photographer approached. "Do you mind if we get a shot of you two? It's for the publication recap." Nyla looked at Damon, unsure. He didn't flinch. "Only if you're okay with it." She nodded once. They stood side by side, not too close, but not far either. The camera flashed, and just like that, they were captured, not as lovers, not as strangers, but as two people rewriting their chapter. Back at home, Nyla slipped off her heels and placed her phone on the charger. It buzzed one last time before bed. Damon, tonight was something. Not sure what to call it, but I'll remember it. She didn't reply right away. Then she typed, "We don't need to name it yet. We're not who we were," and she meant it. They weren't, and maybe, finally, that was a good thing. What do you do when someone who once broke you wants to stand beside you again? Have you ever outgrown someone, only for them to return after you rebuilt yourself? Maybe they were sorry, maybe they changed, but would you let them in? Nyla earned everything. Her business, her voice, her peace. Now Damon's trying to be part of that world. But can you truly forgive someone who once watched you fall? Would you take the risk, or protect your peace? Share your thoughts in the comments. Like this video if you believe people can change. Share it with someone who needs to hear this story. And subscribe to Mr. Charles Stories, because the next chapter could change everything. The flight to Chicago wasn't long, but Nyla's mind stayed in Atlanta. She'd been invited to pitch a major branding campaign for a national health and wellness startup. The opportunity came fast. High stakes, high reward. If Benton Creative landed it, her team would be elevated to a new level of national relevance. Still, it was the first time she'd left Micah for more than a night. "You sure about this?" she asked Claudine as she packed. "Girl, go," Claudine waved her hand. "He's safe. And Damon said he'll be around to help this weekend, right?" Nyla hesitated. He offered, "You trust him?" Nyla paused again. "I'm trying to." Friday evening, Damon arrived at Claudine's just as the sun was setting. He wore jeans and a navy Henley. No blazer. No laptop. Just a bag of snacks in one hand and a small toolkit in the other. "Thought I'd bring over that robot kit Micah and I started," he said. Claudine gave him a pointed look. "He sleeps by 8:30. Homework first. No sugar after 6. Yes, ma'am. And no nonsense. I may look soft, but I'm watching." Damon smiled. "Understood." Micah ran to the door. "You brought the arm extension?" Damon held up the kit. "Fresh out the lab." Claudine gave one last look of warning before grabbing her purse. "I'll be back by 10. Don't let him con you into a second bedtime snack." Noted. As the door closed behind her, Damon looked down at the boy who shared his eyes. "You ready?" Micah grinned. "Always." They spent the next hour building. Micah explained the functions while Damon screwed pieces in. Every so often, the boy looked up, squinting at him like he was trying to figure out a puzzle. "You don't get mad," Micah said suddenly. "Should I?" "Most grown-ups get mad when things break." "Did something break?" Micah pointed to the snapped robot claw. Damon smiled. "Things break. We fix them." Micah considered that. "You and Mommy broke, right?" Damon's hands froze. "We did," he answered softly. "You fixing that too?" Damon glanced at him. "I'm trying." Micah nodded and returned to the robot. Meanwhile, in a hotel suite overlooking downtown Chicago, Nyla stood in front of the bathroom mirror, hands braced on the counter. She looked tired, not weak, just stretched. The pitch was tomorrow morning, and the stakes had finally hit her. If they lost this, she'd be fine, but if they won, everything would change. And Damon. She hadn't texted him all day. She pulled out her phone. "Nyla, everything okay on your end?" A few seconds later, "Damon, all good. Just built a robot arm with your little genius. No sugar. Homework, done. Lights out now." Nyla smiled, then set her phone down and let herself breathe. But peace never stays long. At 3:22 a.m., her phone rang. Unknown Atlanta number. She answered immediately. "Ms. Benton?" A voice said, "Yes?" "This is Dr. Connors from Midtown Children's Clinic. Your son, Micah Benton, was brought in tonight by Mr. Damon Kessler. He had a mild allergic reaction. He's stable now, but we wanted to notify you." Nyla's heart stopped. "What? What happened?" "He had hives, some light wheezing. Mr. Kessler acted quickly and brought him in. He's doing well now, but we've kept him overnight for observation." She was already throwing on clothes. "Can I speak to him?" "One moment." She heard rustling, then Damon's voice. "Nyla, what the hell happened?" He accidentally grabbed a cookie from Claudine's counter. It had peanut traces. He started coughing. I rushed him in. "He's okay." Her voice cracked. "You were supposed to watch him." "I did. I turned my back for 10 seconds while getting water. I didn't know about the peanut allergy. I wrote it down. I didn't see the note. I'm sorry. I was careful, I swear. I trusted you," she snapped. He paused. "You still can." But she hung up. 3 hours later, Nyla walked into the clinic, having caught the earliest flight out. Micah was asleep, his tiny frame hooked to monitors, breathing calmly. Damon stood in the corner, quiet, awake, worn. He looked up. "I'm sorry," he said again. Her voice was low. "You were his emergency contact. I thought he was safe." "He was," Damon said. He is. You let him eat something that could have hurt him. I didn't let anything happen, he said. It was an accident. One I'd take back 100 times over. Nyla's eyes burned. You don't get to make mistakes with my child. I know. He stepped closer. But I also didn't leave. I didn't panic. I didn't wait for someone else to fix it. I carried him out the door and got him here. Because he matters. She didn't respond. I'm not asking for forgiveness, he added. Just the chance to keep showing up. The nurse entered. Micah's awake, she said gently. Nyla walked in first. The boy blinked sleepily. Mommy, I'm here, baby, she whispered, brushing his curls back. Mr. Damon stayed the whole time, he murmured. He didn't leave me. Nyla looked at him. I know. Micah reached for her hand, then his eyes closed again. Damon stood by the door, silent. This wasn't a fairy tale moment. It was messy, painful, but it was real. And sometimes real was all you got. Nyla sat in the clinic hallway, elbows on her knees, palms pressed together. Her suitcase rested at her feet. Her hair was frizzing slightly at the edges, her blazer wrinkled from the flight. But none of it mattered. Not now. She had barely slept. Through the small window in the door, she could see Micah resting peacefully under soft lights. Nurses came and went with gentle care, checking vitals, adjusting IVs. His breathing was steady. His skin was clear again. No hives. No panic. But Nyla's heartbeat still hadn't settled. She looked up as Claudine approached with a quiet stride and an expression that wasn't warm, but wasn't angry either. I got your message, Claudine said, sitting beside her. Nyla didn't look up. I shouldn't have left him. Girl, you had a business trip. A big one. I could have said no, Claudine scoffed. And taught Micah what? That his mama's world shrinks because she's scared something might go wrong? Nyla rubbed her face. Something did go wrong. I know. And yet he's okay. Because the person with him didn't run. Nyla's jaw tightened. That doesn't excuse the mistake. No. But it shows growth. Claudine leaned in. Let me ask you something real, Nyla. If you had made that mistake, would you still expect Damon to trust you again? Nyla blinked. You're holding him to a standard that doesn't even allow for being human. He's not just anyone, Nyla muttered. He's the man who once made me feel invisible. Claudine nodded. And now he's showing up. That's not invisible. That's effort. Ugly, imperfect effort. But still effort. They sat quietly for a long beat. I'm scared, Nyla whispered. I know. I keep waiting for him to mess it up. To disappear. To prove I was right to protect Micah from him. But what if he's trying to prove you wrong? Claudine asked. What if he already has? Damon stood across the hall, watching Nyla and Claudine through the glass. He didn't try to join them. He didn't interrupt. He waited. He knew how much he had failed before. He wasn't here to win. He was here to stay. A few hours later, they discharged Micah with a light prescription and instructions to rest. As they walked to the car, Nyla buckled Micah into the back seat. He was quieter than usual, but alert. Damon opened the front door for her, then moved toward the driver's side, but paused. Do you want me to drive? Nyla hesitated, then nodded. He got in silently. They drove through mid-morning traffic, the car filled with the soft sound of tires over pavement and the occasional hum from the radio. Midway home, Micah fell asleep again. And Nyla spoke. You should have seen the note. I know. But you didn't. I didn't. She exhaled slowly. But you also didn't run. He glanced at her. I've done enough of that in my life. When they got home, Damon carried Micah upstairs, careful not to wake him. Nyla followed close behind. After laying him in bed, Damon turned to leave the room, but Nyla motioned for him to sit on the edge of the bed for a moment. Damon looked down at Micah's tiny hand resting beside him. I don't know what I'm doing, he said quietly, but I know I'll never stop trying to do it better. Nyla sat in the chair near the wall. You're not required to be perfect, she said softly, but you are required to be present. He looked at her. I'm here. I see that now. They sat in the room together, both silent, watching their son, his son, sleep. Downstairs, Nyla poured 2 mugs of tea and handed one to Damon when he joined her. "No apologies," she said. "Not right now. I need honesty more than guilt." "Okay." She took a breath. "I'm not asking you to be a father in a movie. I'm asking you to show up when it's inconvenient, when it's quiet, when no one's clapping." "I will," he said, "because Micah doesn't need another promise. He needs a pattern." Damon nodded. "And what about you?" She met his eyes. "Me? I'm tired, Damon, but I'm still open. If you're real, if you're consistent, then maybe we figure out what that means for us." His throat worked, but he said nothing. He didn't want to ruin it by saying too much. So instead, he reached over and gently touched her hand. No pressure, just presence. And for the first time in a long time, Nyla didn't pull away. Damon stared at the city skyline from his high-rise office window in Los Angeles, a cold cup of coffee untouched on the edge of his desk. His return to California was only supposed to be temporary. A few meetings, a few decisions, then back to Atlanta. But now, he was being asked to stay. The board wanted him involved again, not in the background, not as a consultant, but back as executive chair. They dangled a lucrative acquisition, whispered promises of expansion, legacy, power, influence, everything he once thought mattered. But all he could think about was Micah. And Nyla, and how none of this felt like it used to. He picked up his phone and called Rachel, his longtime executive assistant. "Let's go ahead and cancel the rest of the week's meetings," he said. "Push the acquisition review to next quarter." There was a pause. "Sir, you're walking away from the biggest merger we've had on the table in 2 years. "I'm not walking away," he said. "I'm choosing what matters more." Rachel didn't argue. She just exhaled. "Does this have to do with her?" He didn't answer, because she already knew. Back in Atlanta, Nyla was adjusting too. Her agency was growing faster than she'd projected. Carla, her assistant, had begun interviewing for a junior strategist. Benton Creative was closing a deal with a mid-size sports brand. Life was moving. But something had shifted. Something subtle, something steady. Damon was showing up. Not with flowers, not with fanfare, but with effort. A week ago, he'd fixed Micah's broken bike chain before school. The next day, he'd attended a parent meeting at the learning center. Quiet, observant, not trying to prove anything, just being there. Nyla watched it all, guarded but curious. One evening, Claudine sat beside her on the porch and said, "I'm starting to believe that man's growing roots." Nyla smiled faintly. "I'm starting to believe he's not here just to impress me." Friday evening, Damon returned from Los Angeles and headed straight to Nyla's. Micah was already asleep when he arrived. Nyla opened the door wearing soft joggers and a black tee, shirt, barefoot, holding a glass of wine. "You look relaxed," he said. "It happens when I'm not worried you'll disappear." He stepped inside. "I need to talk to you." She set the glass down. "I figured." I turned down the board seat. Nyla blinked. "What?" "They offered me everything. Title, shares, expansion perks." I said no. "Why?" "Because I don't want to lead another company if I'm failing at the most important job I've ever had." Her eyes narrowed, watching him carefully. "I wasn't there when Micah was born. I wasn't there for his first words, or his first steps, or his scraped knees," he continued. "But I want to be there for the next moments, whatever they are." Nyla folded her arms, silent. Damon took a breath. "And I want to build something that can't be acquired or merged or sold. I want to build us, if you'll let me." Silence stretched between them. "You can't just quit your life for me," she said finally. "I didn't quit it for you," he said. "I changed it for me, because I finally realized what real value looks like." Her shoulders dropped, just slightly. "I'm not asking you to jump into anything," he added, "but I am asking you to believe that I'm not leaving this time." Nyla walked past him, slowly, picked up her glass again, and stared out the window. "You've said the right things before, Damon," she said softly. "I know. But I believe actions more than words now." "Then keep watching," he replied. And she did. It was Saturday morning. The sky was cloudless, the air warm, and the sidewalks buzzed with families heading to markets, soccer fields, and errands. Nyla stood at the door, holding Micah's backpack. "He gets cranky if he doesn't eat by noon," she said. Damon nodded, adjusting his watch. "I packed snacks. Nothing with peanuts. Triple-checked every label." She looked him over. Black t-shirt, jeans, sneakers, a soft confidence she hadn't seen years ago. Micah ran out with his robot keychain clipped to his jeans. "Can we go to the museum first?" Damon knelt. "Of course. Robots or dinosaurs?" Micah's grin widened. "Both." Nyla stepped back and opened the door. "Go ahead." As they walked off down the sidewalk, Nyla felt something unfamiliar tightening in her chest. Not fear. Trust. The Atlanta Children's Museum was alive with sound. Damon bought tickets while Micah darted toward the robot exhibit, eyes wide. Damon didn't pull out his phone, didn't rush. He watched. He asked questions. He crouched beside Micah as he tinkered with controls and buttons. "Can we build one like this at home?" Micah asked. "If your mom says it's okay, we'll figure it out," Damon said. A boy nearby dropped his toy and started crying. Another bumped into Micah by accident. Micah stumbled, then looked back at Damon. Damon waited. Calm, hands relaxed. "You're okay," he said gently. Micah stood tall again. "I didn't cry. You don't have to be tough all the time." But that was brave. They spent hours walking, exploring, laughing, and when Micah's energy finally dipped, Damon carried him on his shoulders out to the car. Micah dozed off 5 minutes into the ride home. Nyla opened the door before Damon even knocked. "That was quick." "He passed out in the car," Damon said. "We did dinosaurs last." She stepped aside. Damon carried Micah to the couch and laid him down gently. As he turned to leave, Nyla said, "Stay." He looked at her. Just for a minute. They walked into the kitchen. She poured iced tea, handed him a glass, and leaned against the counter. "He looked happy," she said. "He was... You're good with him." "I'm learning." She nodded, slowly, then asked, "Did you ever imagine this?" Damon smiled faintly. "No, not once. But now? I can't stop imagining it." She didn't speak, not right away. Then finally, "He trusts you. I'm honored by that. I'm starting to..." Damon set the glass down. "You don't have to say anything. I'm not rushing you." "I know," she said. "But maybe I'm done making you prove everything." He looked at her, the woman he'd once let walk out of his life without a word, now standing here, letting him back in, not with promises, with quiet moments, with earned ground. That night, Damon sent her a message. "Damon, you didn't have to trust me, but thank you for letting me try." Nyla replied minutes later. "Nyla, trying is easy. Staying when no one's watching, that's what counts." He stared at the message, then replied, "Then I'll keep staying." 3 weeks had passed since the museum outing, and everything between Nyla and Damon had become quieter. Not colder, just steadier. He showed up on Wednesdays to help with homework. Saturday mornings, they walked to the park together, often without words, and every so often, Nyla would glance across a room and find him already watching her, not with hunger or regret, but with a kind of calm respect that unnerved her more than she admitted. Then came the invite. The Midtown Creative Coalition Awards. The event honored leaders in branding, community development, and corporate partnerships. One of Benton Creative's campaigns, a health literacy push for underserved schools, had earned a nomination. It wasn't a big deal, not compared to her previous recognition, but this time she was invited not as a finalist, but as a speaker. And it was Damon who encouraged her to say yes. "Why are you being so quiet?" Carla asked. brushing imaginary lint off Nyla's sleeve. Nyla smoothed her dress. Black velvet, off-shoulder. Fitted, understated, but strong. "I'm not used to sharing space with someone, publicly," she muttered. Carla raised an eyebrow. "Is that why you asked Damon to come?" "I didn't ask." Carla smirked. "But you didn't say no." Nyla didn't respond. The ballroom was smaller than the last. Less press, more peers, but still formal enough that every detail mattered. Damon arrived right on time. Slate grey suit, open collar, no flash. He didn't walk beside her when they entered. He walked behind her, letting her lead, letting her shine. They found their seats near the front, next to a non-profit director and a local sports brand rep Nyla had partnered with before. As the host introduced her, Nyla took a breath and walked up to the stage. Her heels echoed softly as she moved across the floor, shoulders back. 10 years ago, she began, I sat in rooms like this, not as a speaker, not even as a guest, but as a hired hand. Quiet laughter from the crowd. I knew how to build brands before I knew how to build a budget. I learned how to tell stories before I ever learned how to tell people no. The audience nodded, some smiling. The tone shifted. I learned that value doesn't always come with a title, and leadership doesn't always come from the top. Sometimes it comes from the corner seat, the quiet voice, the person no one sees. Until they refuse to be invisible anymore. Applause rose. Nyla glanced briefly at Damon. He wasn't clapping. He was watching. Like the words were not for the room, but for him. After the event, guests mingled over cocktails. Nyla stood by the refreshment table, sipping club soda, when she heard a voice behind her. Familiar. Sharp, unwelcome. Well, well. Still the queen of graceful exits. She turned. Tessa Grant, Damon's former VP of Strategy. One of the first people Nyla ever envied at Kessler Innovations. Elegant, efficient. The woman Damon once had lunch with, far too often. Tessa, Nyla said flatly. Tessa smiled. Didn't expect to see you here. But then again, you've always had a way of landing on your feet. Some of us build new ground, Nyla replied. We don't wait to be invited back. Tessa chuckled. Still sharp, I see. Before Nyla could reply, Damon stepped beside her. Tessa. Damon, Tessa said with a stiff smile. Didn't expect you either. Didn't plan to be seen, he replied, eyes still on Nyla. Well, it's cute, Tessa said, motioning between them. A full-circle romance, from termination to temptation. Nyla's jaw tightened. Damon's voice dropped. Calm, cold. She's not a comeback story. She's the standard now. Tessa blinked. And for the first time in years, Nyla felt someone stand up for her. Not in defense, but in acknowledgement. Tessa excused herself quickly. Outside, under the soft glow of the parking lot lights, Nyla leaned against her car, arms folded. Damon stood beside her. She always talk like that? He asked. Only when she thinks she has the upper hand. She didn't. No, Nyla said. But I let her once. They were quiet for a moment. Then Damon reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Nyla froze. Before you panic, he said quickly. It's not what you think. He opened the box. Inside was a pendant, a tiny engraved plate, silver, clean. She looked at it, then up at him. It's Micah's birth date, he said, and his name. I had it made last week. She didn't speak. I didn't buy it to win you, Damon added. I bought it to remind myself of the only thing I never want to forget again. Her chest tightened. He held it out. She took it, slowly, then whispered, You keep this. He blinked. Why? Because it's not my memory to carry. It's yours. He closed the box again and nodded. No ego, no disappointment, just understanding. And that, more than anything, was what shifted her heart. Sunday morning sunlight spilled across the Benton living room, casting gold along the hardwood floors. Micah was at the table, legs swinging beneath the chair, coloring a robot with too many arms and not enough legs. Damon sat beside him, eyes flicking between the crayons and the boy's face. "You know you're good at this," Damon said. Micah grinned. "I'm going to make real ones one day. I believe that—" Micah hesitated, then asked, "Are you staying forever?" The question wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was direct. Damon didn't flinch. "I'm not going anywhere, Micah," he said. "Not unless your mom tells me to. And even then, I'd still be close." Micah nodded slowly, satisfied. Damon added, "You ever have a question, even the kind that makes your stomach feel weird, you ask me. Deal?" "Deal," Micah said, offering a red crayon-stained pinky. Damon linked it with his own. Upstairs, Nyla stood at the edge of her bed, holding a letter. It had been buried at the bottom of an old jewelry box. She didn't even remember putting it there, but the handwriting was unmistakable. Her mother's. She sat on the edge of the mattress and peeled it open. "Nyla, if you're reading this, I probably didn't get the timing right. I never really knew how to say the right things, especially when they mattered most. But I want to say this. Loving someone isn't a contract. It's a choice, over and over again. Even when they mess up. Even when they don't know how to love you the way you deserve. Don't let fear of being hurt keep you from what might be good. Not everyone will abandon you. Not everyone will be like your father. And when you find someone who's still standing, even after you've shut every door, let yourself unlock one. Just one. Love, Mama." Nyla folded the letter and held it in her lap, staring at the floor. She hadn't read it until now, because until now, she didn't know if she believed it. Later that evening, after Damon had left and Micah had gone to bed, Nyla sat on the porch. The city was quiet, the sky beginning to grey. Claudine came out and sat beside her with 2 mugs of tea. "You've been quiet," Claudine said. "I found one of Mama's letters." Claudine didn't ask what it said. She just waited. Nyla sipped the tea. She wrote about choice, about not running from people just because they're imperfect. Claudine smiled gently. "Your mama knew a lot about healing. Took her a while, but when she got there, she didn't go back." "I'm tired of running, Auntie," Nyla whispered. "Then stop." Nyla stared out into the night. "I don't know what to do next." "You don't have to," Claudine replied. "You just have to stay open. That man downstairs, he ain't perfect, but he's been showing up. And so far, that's more than any other man's done for you and your boy." Nyla nodded slowly. "He asked Micah today if he could be a constant," she said. "And Micah, he asked if Damon was staying forever." Claudine chuckled. "He's not a baby anymore. He feels the shift. I'm feeling it too." Claudine stood. "Then the question is, what are you going to do about it?" That night, Nyla wrote Damon a message. "Nyla, thank you for today, for what you said to him. He asked about you after you left. Damon, I'm here. You both can ask me anything, no matter what. Nyla, are you ready to step into something you don't fully control?" A pause. Then, "Damon, I already did the moment I held his hand." She stared at the reply, then smiled. Soft, real. The next morning, Nyla printed the letter from her mother and placed it inside her planner. Not hidden in a box this time, because it was no longer a warning. It was a permission slip, and she was finally ready to use it. The day began quietly, with soft light spilling through Nyla's living room curtains. Outside, the Atlanta sky was painted in pastel streaks, signaling the start of spring. But inside her chest, a different kind of season stirred, one of restlessness, warmth, and the terrifying edge of hope. She hadn't expected Damon to text her again after last night. Not after what he said, not after the way he looked at her. But there it was. A simple message on her phone when she woke up. "I'll be in your neighborhood today. Want to walk?" No games, no grand gesture, just a walk. She debated for 5 minutes, maybe 10. then replied, "Sure. I'll meet you at the lake." By the time she arrived, the small community lake was half alive with joggers, moms with strollers, and older couples feeding ducks. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't grand. But it was theirs, the in-between space they'd used twice before. Once as strangers, once as parents, now as something they hadn't named yet. She saw him before he saw her. Damon stood near the water, hands in his coat pockets, his silhouette calm against the rippling breeze. He wore a navy pullover and dark jeans, simple, soft, like he was trying not to stand out. He turned when he felt her presence. That was the thing about Damon. Even before words, he always sensed her. "Nyla," he said, with the kind of smile that didn't try too hard but meant everything. "Damon," she replied, walking up beside him, her arms folded from the wind. They started to walk the trail without much fuss. It was quiet at first, peaceful. Ducks paddled in the water. Children laughed in the distance. Then, finally, she said, "You've been consistent, showing up for Micah, being careful with me." He looked over at her. "It matters how I show up this time." She raised an eyebrow. "This time? I failed before. Not just as a boss, but as a man. I made you feel replaceable, disposable." He swallowed. "But that night, I never forgot it. I didn't forget you." She held his gaze for a moment before looking ahead. "You didn't act like it. The morning after, you went ice cold. You didn't even ask if I got home safe." "I was afraid," he admitted. "I told myself it was a mistake because it felt like more than just a night." Her heart tightened. That was the first time he'd acknowledged it out loud. "I thought I was imagining it," she whispered. "You weren't," he said. "You were the only person in that building who didn't try to impress me. You were real and strong. You were grounding. I wasn't used to that." She stopped walking. "So you fired me?" Damon exhaled, nodding. "I couldn't handle being vulnerable. You saw me, and I didn't like being seen. And yet, here you are," she said, softer now. He turned to her. "Here I am." They sat on a nearby bench, the sun now warming their backs. It was quiet again, but the air buzzed differently. "I don't know what this is," Nyla admitted. "I've spent the last 6 years doing everything alone. I'm not sure how to let someone in." Damon leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Then let me start, slowly. No rush, no pressure, just honesty." She blinked. "Honesty?" He turned to her. "Ask me anything. No filters." Her brows pulled together in surprise. But she didn't hesitate. "Did you ever try to find me?" "Yes," he said. "Twice. I looked you up 2 years after the firing. You had moved, changed numbers. There were no updates online. I told myself to stop. Why? Because I thought I didn't deserve closure. I ruined something, and maybe I didn't have the right to chase it." She looked away. "Do you regret that night?" "No," he said, firmly. "Never. It changed me. Even if I pretended it didn't." Nyla let that sit between them. Her fingers laced in her lap, but her heart pounded harder now. "My turn," he said gently. She nodded. "What was your lowest point?" Her throat tightened. She hadn't expected that. "There were a few," she whispered. "But the worst was 4 months after Micah was born. I had just started a second job at a diner. My car broke down. Rent was due. I held him in my arms, and I remember thinking, this is where I break." Damon closed his eyes for a second. Then, quietly, "I'm sorry." She looked at him. "You didn't know." He met her gaze. "I should have." Silence wrapped around them again. But it wasn't cold this time. It was understanding. She asked next, "Do you love Micah?" He didn't blink. "Yes." "Why?" "Because he's smart, funny, kind. Because he asked me the other day if stars have feelings, and I didn't know how to answer without crying." Damon smiled sadly. "Because he reminds me of all the parts of you I didn't cherish enough." Her breath hitched. Your turn, she said quickly, needing the moment to pass. He nodded, thinking. What's one thing you want, if fear didn't stop you? Nyla hesitated, then answered, a family, a real one. Not perfect, but present, loving, whole. Damon looked at her for a long time. Then, let's build that. She blinked. You think it's that simple? No, he said. I think it's that worth it. Nyla stood, needing to move. Damon followed. They walked again in silence until they reached a small wooden bridge. She leaned on the railing, watching the ducks paddle beneath. You scare me, she said suddenly. He moved beside her. Why? Because I want to believe you mean it. That you've changed. That this could be something. He looked over at her. And I don't know if I can survive being wrong about you twice. Damon's voice was low. Then, let me show you every day that I'm worth believing in. No pressure, no expectations, just a chance. She turned to him. He looked calm, grounded, but there was vulnerability in his eyes now. Raw, open, rare. She didn't say yes. She didn't say no, but she didn't walk away either. And sometimes, staying was enough to start something real. Later that day, Damon found himself standing in front of a modest brick house, with blue shutters and wind chimes that sang softly with every breeze. It wasn't the kind of place he was used to. No security gates, no marble floors. But something about it felt more real than any place he'd ever lived in. Nyla had invited him in. That small step meant more than she realized. He carried a brown paper bag with takeout from one of her favorite Thai spots. She hadn't asked him to bring anything. He just remembered. And remembering, he'd learned, was part of earning trust. When she opened the door, she wore a plain tee and leggings. Her hair was pulled into a bun, face fresh. She didn't look prepared for a guest. She looked like herself. That was the gift. I brought dinner, he said, lifting the bag with a soft smile. Nyla stepped aside, letting him in. Hope you remembered the peanut sauce. I got 2 extra, he replied. The living room was small, cozy, filled with books and soft lighting. There were no signs of luxury. But there were signs of life. Drawings taped to the fridge. A stack of folded laundry on the couch. A scented candle flickering in the corner. Micah's with a neighbor, she said casually, setting the table. They're doing a backyard movie night. He nodded, setting out the food. Thanks for letting me come by. She glanced at him. Don't make it a big deal. It's dinner. You earned it. They ate quietly at first, the kind of quiet that's full of thought, not tension. Damon noticed how she closed her eyes when she tasted the coconut curry, how she dabbed her lips before speaking. He noticed everything now, not out of curiosity, but care. Micah's smart, he said. You've done an amazing job with him. I tried, she replied, setting her fork down. There were times I thought I was failing. You didn't, Damon said. He's the kind of boy who asks thoughtful questions. He shares his food. He says, thank you. Nyla smiled faintly. I taught him to notice people, to be present. I didn't want him to grow up thinking love is loud and selfish. Damon's gaze didn't leave hers. What do you think love is? She hesitated. Quiet, consistent, safe. Like a light that stays on even when the room is dark. His chest tightened. That was the kind of love he had never received, and the kind he wanted to give now. I didn't know how to love back then, he said honestly. Everything I built, the business, the money, the image, it came from needing to prove something, to my father, to myself. She tilted her head slightly. What did your father want from you? Control, Damon said. He used silence as a weapon, approval as currency. So I learned to win, not to feel. Nyla leaned back in her seat. So when we spent the night, it scared you? He nodded. You saw through all of it. The title, the suits. You weren't intimidated. You were kind. You were honest. You didn't flinch when I was vulnerable. She folded her arms. You didn't let me be vulnerable, though. You walked away. You fired me. You didn't call. You didn't even ask if I was okay. His throat tightened. That's what I regret most. There was silence between them again. You can't rewrite the past, Nyla said, her voice low. But you get to decide how this story continues. He nodded slowly. Then I'm choosing honesty, choosing to show up, even if it's slow, even if I don't get everything right. Her expression softened, but her voice held steady. I don't need perfect. I need steady. I can be that, he said. They cleared the plates together. She washed. He dried. It wasn't romantic in a dramatic way. It was quiet, domestic, the kind of moment most people overlook, but Damon didn't. As they finished, she turned to him. Want to sit outside for a bit? He nodded. They stepped out onto the small back porch. The night air was crisp. The stars blinked above. Damon sat beside her on the wooden swing, the creaking sound a steady rhythm. Tell me something you've never told anyone, she said, almost teasing. He looked at her for a moment, then spoke. When I was 12, I started writing stories, he said. I used to write about a man who lived on the moon and fell in love with a woman on Earth. He built a staircase made of stars just to get to her. Nyla's eyes widened. You wrote that? He chuckled. Yeah. I'd hide the notebook under my bed. My dad found it once and threw it away. Said men didn't waste time on fantasies. She stared at him, heart aching for the boy he had been. Do you still write? I stopped. But sometimes, I still think in stories. You're thinking in one now. Damon turned toward her, voice quiet. Yeah. A man hurt a woman he loved. She raised a son alone. He came back, not to take credit, but to do better. He doesn't know the ending yet, but he's hoping it's not too late. Nyla looked away, the wind brushing her cheek. Her voice was barely above a whisper. What if the woman still doesn't know how to trust the ending? He reached for her hand gently. Then the man waits, shows up, writes a new chapter every day with his actions, not his words. She didn't pull away. For the first time, her fingers laced with his. It wasn't a declaration. It wasn't a promise. It was a beginning. They sat like that for a long time, hands together, swing creaking, hearts full of what could be, and as the night deepened, so did the unspoken hope between them, that, maybe, just maybe, two broken people could build something whole again. The next morning, Nyla stood in front of her bathroom mirror, toothbrush in hand, staring at her own reflection as if seeing someone she hadn't met before. There was something different in her eyes, not softness, not resignation, peace. For years, she had carried the weight of hurt, anger, and motherhood on her shoulders. Damon showing up hadn't erased those burdens, but last night, it had shifted them. He hadn't begged, he hadn't excused. He had shown up, fully, honestly. That mattered. Still, peace wasn't the same as clarity. So she stayed grounded in what she knew. Micah's lunch still needed to be packed. Her errands wouldn't run themselves. And Damon, he needed to keep proving that this wasn't a moment. It was a decision. By noon, she had finished her grocery run, picked up a book order from the library, and stopped by the local pharmacy. On her way out, her phone buzzed. Damon, are you home around 3? I want to bring something by. She stared at the message, thumb hovering. Nyla, yes. Front door will be open. At exactly 3:02 p.m., the knock came anyway. Damon stood at the door, hair slightly tousled, holding a framed photo. He looked nervous. Not business nervous, personal nervous. She raised a brow. You knocked, even though I said it was open. He smiled sheepishly. Still learning boundaries, she stepped aside. Come in. Once inside, he handed her the frame. It was a photograph of a man and a boy sitting on a bench under a tree. The boy, maybe 6 or 7, looked strikingly like Micah. The man, older and worn, looked like Damon, but softer. Nyla studied it. Who are they? Damon exhaled. My mentor, Leon. He found me when I was 16. I was getting arrested for trespassing into a university campus, trying to sneak into a coding seminar. Her eyes widened slightly. You, He nodded. Yeah. I thought if I couldn't afford college, I'd at least try to learn from being around smart people. Leon pulled me aside that day. Didn't lecture me, just asked if I was hungry. What happened next? He brought me sandwiches for 2 months straight, sat with me on that same bench, asked me questions no one ever had, made me believe I was more than just potential. He's the reason I built Calyx Tech. Nyla looked down at the photo again. Why bring this to me? Damon's voice dropped. Because you're doing the same thing for Micah, for yourself. You're building something real. I wanted you to know I see it. Her throat tightened. I also wanted to ask. He cleared his throat. If you'd let me take you and Micah somewhere this weekend. Just lunch. No pressure. She hesitated. I know it's early, he added. But I want to show him. Not just who I was, but who I'm choosing to be. She searched his eyes for any trace of ego or performance. But there was none. Just quiet sincerity. Okay, she said softly, but not someplace fancy. He hates tight clothes and napkins on his lap. Damon smiled. Burger joint. Arcade. Done. Saturday came. Micah bounced with excitement as he pulled on his sneakers. So this guy, is he really your friend now? Nyla paused. He's someone I used to know. He's trying to be more. Micah tilted his head. Like a good guy or a superhero? She laughed. Maybe just a man doing the right thing. At the arcade, Micah took to Damon faster than expected. Not because of gifts or tricks. Damon didn't bring anything flashy. He brought attention. He listened, cheered him on, lost the first 2 rounds of air hockey, then came back for a tie. By the end of lunch, Micah was asking Damon to show him how to tie his sneakers the fast way like you do. Nyla watched from across the table, something tightening in her chest. Not fear, not hesitation, longing. For the first time, Micah looked full, whole, like something had quietly clicked into place. And Damon? He didn't try to claim anything. He didn't take photos. He didn't even sit too close. He just existed beside them. Present, open, learning. As they walked out, Micah ran ahead, chasing bubbles from a street vendor. Damon slowed beside Nyla. I don't want to rush, he said. But I also don't want to pretend this isn't what I want. She glanced at him. I want a real life with you, he continued. Not just co-parenting. Not just shared weekends. I want coffee with you in the mornings. Arguments about who left dishes in the sink. Movie nights on the couch. Nyla stopped walking. Damon turned to face her fully. I want everything, he said, voice low. Not because of guilt, not out of obligation, but because I love you. Silence. Even the noise of the arcade behind them faded. She breathed in slowly. I've spent years learning how to be enough without you. Enough for myself, for Micah. I know, he said. So if I choose this, choose us, it's not because I need rescuing. It's because I want a partner, not a savior. His eyes softened. Then let me be your partner. The words hung in the air between them. Micah ran back, tugging Nyla's sleeve. Can we get ice cream, please? She smiled. Only if Damon promises not to steal my toppings. Damon grinned. No promises. They walked off together, 3 shadows stretching under the soft afternoon light. No one declared anything dramatic. But in that moment, a family, real and imperfect, began to form. Nyla sat on the edge of her couch, nerves clawing at her chest. She hadn't spoken to anyone about Damon's confession, not to her friends, not to her therapist, not even to herself out loud. The moment lingered in her chest like a warm ember, both terrifying and tempting. Could she trust it? Could she trust him? A knock interrupted her thoughts. Damon stood at the door. He wasn't dressed like the CEO the world worshipped. No tailored suit, no Rolex. Just jeans, a soft black sweater, and sneakers. Like a man coming home, not one looking to make a statement. She opened the door. Hey, hi. They stared for a moment. Then Nyla stepped aside. Damon entered, holding a small bag. I brought food, Thai from that place you mentioned, years ago. She managed a smile. You remembered? Every detail. I just pretended I didn't. The table was already set. Damon placed the containers down and started unpacking like it was the most natural thing in the world. They ate quietly for a while. Micah was with Nyla's friend for the weekend. It was just them. No distractions. No easy exits. Damon broke the silence first. I need you to know, Nyla. I didn't come back to ease my guilt. I came back because I never stopped thinking about you. She looked up. You had a funny way of showing that. I know. He leaned forward. I was selfish. I had everything to lose, and you scared me. What I felt for you scared me. I wasn't looking to trap you. I know you weren't, he said firmly. But that night changed everything. You didn't chase me. You didn't beg. You built a whole life without me. And still, here I am, wanting in. She studied him. It's been 6 years, Damon. Every single day, I've thought about what it would have been like if I'd stopped you that day in the office. If I had asked what was really going on. If I had listened. But you didn't. No, he admitted. I punished you because you mattered. Because the thought of needing someone made me feel weak. I grew up with a father who treated vulnerability like a disease. I inherited that. But I don't want to pass that on to Micah. Her throat tightened. Micah doesn't know what rejection feels like. I made sure of that. I see it. The way he looks at you. He's confident. Safe. That's all you weren't ready to be a father then. I wasn't even ready to be a man, he said softly. Silence. She stood and walked to the window. I built this business from nothing, Damon. Every client, every dollar, every sleepless night. I did that. I know. I've followed your career quietly. You're brilliant. I don't need saving. I'm not here to save you, he said, standing behind her. I'm here to show up. For you, for him, for us. If you'll let me. She turned slowly, tears welling. I don't know if I have the strength to be hurt again. Then let me carry the weight this time. That night, they didn't kiss. They didn't touch. They sat side by side, two people slowly dismantling 6 years of distance. Weeks passed. Damon showed up consistently, at Micah's chess tournaments, at parent-teacher meetings, quietly, respectfully. Nyla watched it all unfold like someone stuck between two worlds. Then came Micah's birthday. Nyla planned something small, just a few kids, cake, and balloons. Damon had asked if he could bring the gift himself. When he arrived, he carried a wrapped box nearly as tall as Micah. Micah tore it open. Inside was a build-it-yourself robot kit, exactly the one he'd circled in a catalogue months ago but never asked for. How'd you know? Micah beamed. Damon knelt. Moms know everything. I just asked the right person. Micah threw his arms around him. Nyla stood frozen, heart clenching. After the party, when the guests were gone and the balloons started to droop, she walked Damon to the door. Thank you, she said. You made his day. I meant what I said, Nyla. I want to build a life with you, not just moments. I know. He stepped closer. Do you feel anything for me? Or is that door closed? She didn't answer right away. Then, in a soft voice, I never stopped feeling something. He exhaled. But feelings don't erase hurt. No, he said. They fuel healing, if we let them. She stepped back inside. Did she trust him? She wasn't sure. But for the first time in years, she wanted to. 1 month later, Damon invited her to his townhouse in Atlanta. It was modern, glass-walled, and open. But what struck her wasn't the house. It was the framed photos. Micah, her, pictures she never knew were taken. Moments Damon must have asked someone to capture quietly. I don't want to hide what matters to me anymore, he said. She stood in the center of the living room, emotions swimming. Are you trying to rewrite the past? She asked. No, he said. I'm trying to write a new chapter. With you. He pulled out a small box. not a ring. A key. No pressure, no grand gestures, just an invitation. To what? To see if maybe, just maybe, you and I can build something from scratch. This time with love. She took the key. Not as a promise, but as a possibility. If this story moved you, don't scroll away just yet. Love, pain, growth, redemption. What would you do if someone who once broke you came back wanting to fix what they shattered? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tap that like button if Nyla's strength inspired you. Subscribe to join our storytelling family. More powerful stories are coming. Share this with someone who believes in second chances, or someone who needs to. Your support keeps this channel alive. Thank you for watching Mr. Charles Stories. Until next time, stay strong, stay hopeful, and never forget your worth.